Sharon's here now with a look through the papers. She's starting off in the US, in fact, with that Supreme Court hearing on the state of Mississippi's abortion law, Sharon.
Yes, lots of commentary on the case that may result in the overturning of Roe v. Wade. The Washington Post says such an outcome would be the easy part for pro-life advocates in their decades-long quest to outlaw abortion. It wouldn't suddenly make terminations illegal, says the paper, but it would return the issue to the political process and the court of public opinion. And that opinion is decidedly mixed, says the Post, while polls suggest that a majority of Americans support keeping the procedure legal. That support drops quickly depending on the circumstances. Now, the Supreme Court decision is due to be delivered in the middle of next year's midterm elections. The campaign. For the New York Times, that means any move to weaken or overturn Roe v. Wade would immediately elevate abortion rights into a defining issue. It says it could even reinvigorate efforts to overhaul the Supreme Court itself. Now, taking a more conservative stance, the Wall Street Journal describes Roe v. Wade as a mistake that's distorted American politics and law for half a century. One of the worst decisions in Supreme Court history. It says the case turned abortion into a pitched political battle. The Journal insists that in a democracy, such a profound moral question shouldn't be determined by unelected judges, but rather by the people.
Let's cross the Atlantic now. We're going to bring you to Brussels, the EU's $300 billion global investment strategy.
Yes, and starting with this one here in France, and the business daily Les Echos, it says that while the Global Gateway Plan is officially aimed at financing infrastructure here in the EU and further afield, it's essentially a challenge to Chinese influence. Now, European notions of grandeur take a hit in Germany's Süddeutsche Zeitung. It describes as a fantasy the idea that the EU is a serious geopolitical player, pointing out that Brussels isn't alone in seeking to curb Chinese ambitions. It says the US and the UK have already launched similar plans. The question now is whether London, Brussels and Washington can work together to form a real alternative to China's Belt and Roads strategy. Now, also cutting Brussels down to size somewhat, China's Global Times says the plan is a de facto rubber check and yet another example of the West's endless moves to seize the high moral ground. It says the EU's feeble governing credentials damage the credibility of its ambitions.
Now, let's turn to a very serious story which is making the newspapers here in France. This is allegations of abuse being directed towards a judo coach here in France.
Yes, I was close to death. Margot Pinault tells Le Parisien the Olympic champion has tweeted images of the injuries she claims were inflicted on her by her coach and partner Alain Schmidt last weekend. Now, prosecutors are appealing Schmidt's release after he was accused in court of acts of domestic violence, charges he denies. Magistrates said there wasn't enough evidence against him, the decision coming amid an ongoing debate about domestic violence here in France.
Now we're going to talk about another big story of the week. Of course, it's the Omicron COVID variant. We're just getting news actually coming to us that there's been a case found in the Paris Ile-de-France region from somebody returning from Nigeria. But you're looking at when it may have first arrived here in Europe.
Questions about that. One of the first people in the world to become infected with this particular strain. He says he may have caught the virus when he was in London. In an exclusive interview with the Guardian newspaper, the Israeli cardiologist says he became ill after attending a major medical conference last month, and that involved over 1,200 health professionals. The comments also raising fears that other medics may have been exposed to the virus. Now, on a somewhat lighter note, the three wise men are heading for mandatory quarantine as countries around the world tighten their COVID restrictions. Strictly no tidings of comfort or joy, says Cartoon Blower. Rather, PCR tests and an obligatory stay at an airport hotel over the festive season.
Yes, I wonder where that quarantine tent is. Probably just out of the picture. And finally, staying on that theme, some advice, in fact, for Christmas shoppers from Sharon.
Yes, a word of warning from The Guardian. Beware the rapping cactus. He looks harmless enough, you'd have to say, but this dancing prickly plant has been pulled from the shelves of US retailer Walmart. Why, you might ask? It's because a woman in Ontario discovered that he was rapping about cocaine and hopelessness in one of his songs, which he sang in Polish.
In Polish? Oh. somebody who speaks Polish in Canada managed to decipher it and work it out. Very nice. Thank you very much. A prickly tale to end from Sharon and the newspapers.